Hey guys, so we are here at the very end. We have our last DLC character, Sora. And with that brings our final DLC stage as well, which is Hollow Bastion. This is a really awesome opportunity for us because we have all the cards on the table. We know what all stages we're going to have for the rest of Ultimate. And we can really craft an amazing rule set that is going to cater to everybody as much as we possibly can. So in this video, we're going to talk about Hollow Bastion, how it fits in, how we're going to even use it. It looks like Smashville. Does it function like Smashville? Are we going to replace Smashville? And we're going to go way beyond that too. We're going to talk about some big problems in our current rule set. Some of our most cherished stages are very, very problematic, and we'll be going over that. After that, we're going to list out some criteria. What makes a rule set good? What makes it fair? What makes it balanced? What makes it to where it is not favoring specific archetypes of characters? You never want to have a rule set that ultimately creates the tier list, affects the tier list. That's what we had in a lot of previous games. And then the last thing is we're going to look at these problems, we're going to look at the criteria to make an awesome rule set, and then we're going to use that criteria and those problems, and we're going to craft two rule sets. One, a very, very conservative list, and two, a very, very liberal list, a lot more stages, and we'll go into that in a bit. So buckle in, we have some really cool discussions ahead of us. Alright, so one of the first things we're going to go over is some criticisms to our current stage list. What makes it great? What makes it not so great? Let's take a look at the Super Smash Con 2021 stage list. The first issue that I really want to highlight is one of duplicate layouts, and this is specifically talking about the platform layouts. We can look here at this stage list and we can see, hey, there are duplicate of these like triangle tri-platform layouts. We've got Battlefield and Yoshi Story. We've also got duplicates of this Pokemon Stadium bi-platform with Small Battlefield and Pokemon Stadium. And then everything else is pretty unique in layout. There's only one stage with 0 platforms, and that's that's Final Destination. And then like Town and City is unique because it transforms, and everything else is unique except you have Battlefield and Pokemon Stadium 2, which are just these oddballs where they've got these duplicate layouts. And what happens with this is you have a stage list that favors characters who excel on those stages. So say Mario really loves tri-platforms, really loves taking people up to that top platform, and can really snag some early kills. That's awesome for Mario. But what if you're a character that really excels on Smashville? You don't get that same benefit. You don't have 2 stages that you can go to. You don't get to burn both of your opponent's bans on one stage archetype. They can ban your best stage, and then they have a favor to ban whatever else they want. That puts your character archetype at a disadvantage. So that is one big thing that irks me, is having duplicate stage layouts, but it's not balanced. Something that we're going to touch on later is, could that be balanced? Could we just have duplicates of each of these stage layouts? Could we, use this new Hollow Bastion to not replace Smashville, but also accompany it? We're going to be talking about that in the stage list that one of the 2 stage lists that I made later on. But that was just to highlight the problem with having an unbalanced amount of duplicate stage layouts. Another problem with our current rule set is stage length. Stage length is really important. I think everybody understands that some characters really want to run away and they really don't want to be next to you, or they have insane mobility and they can go really fast and get away from you in any situation and then approach when they want. And then there are characters who don't do that. There are characters who want to be up close. There are characters that are not so fast. And sometimes these long stages really don't benefit them. Like, I can, just off the top of my head, a big character like Incineroar, maybe the Incineroar mains disagree, maybe the Ganon mains disagree, but I don't really imagine you just want to chase someone down on an extremely long stage. You'd just rather be next to them, like on something really close like Smashville. So, stage length is incredibly important. We already talked about platform layout. Stage length is really, really unbalanced in our current rule set. So, like, if we just look at our starters, so the average length of a stage is 160. This is pretty much the gold standard of length. You've got Battlefield, you've got Final Destination. Those are both 160 in length. And Small Battlefields is also 160 in length. Also, Lylat is 160 in length. Also, Kalos is 160 in length, or just width of the stage. Stages that are not the standard, they're either larger or smaller, is Smashville. Smashville is way smaller. In fact, Smashville is 140 in terms of units of length. So that is by far our shortest legal stage. On the flip side, you have Pokemon Stadium 2, which Pokemon Stadium 2 is our largest legal stage by a good margin, and it's 187 units. 188 if you really want to round it up. And that's 18 units larger than, our normal length, which it might be kind of hard to visualize. There's an awesome website just called turnameta.com/stage comparison. I'm going to go ahead and put that in the description. You can find it really easy if you just Google Smash Ultimate stage data, and you can actually get like a visual representation here of like how much longer Pokemon Stadium 2 is compared to Smashville. Or you can look at Small Battlefield, which is the median between the two. And having this balance of having a long stage and a short stage in the starter list, that's fine. What the real problem really comes down to is like this 5th stage, Town and City, is also a long stage. So in terms of just from the starters, we have a normal length, and then a short stage, a really long stage, and then a pretty long stage. That's gonna benefit people who want to run away or have insane mobility. Don't really appreciate that balance there. That's not really fair to characters that don't like to be in that type of environment. Let's look at our counterpicks. So Kalos and Lylat have the same stage length, so does Small Battlefield, and then Yoshi's Story is an incredibly short stage. So, with everything open, all the stages legal, including the starters and the counterpicks, you finally get that balance. But it's so important for Game 1 that if you are a distanced, fighter and you like a lot of space, you're just gonna get the benefit with this rule set. For Game 1 anyways. So immediately we kind of outline the problem of duplicate platform layouts are unnecessary unless it's balanced, which we'll go into in a second, which, Hollow Bastion is really important because it gives Smashville a duplicate stage so we can balance the other duplicate stages, or we just need to cut out all the duplicates. And this other thing is talking about the stage width. It's really important how much stage you have to fight on. Let's take a look at what makes a good rule set. We're going to make a criteria, and this criteria, the first thing on this list is going to be the objective of making a stage list that doesn't favor one archetype of character. And what I mean by that is that it has to have balance and variety. So if we create a stage list where there are more longer stages than shorter stages, obviously our meta is going to reflect a result pool where characters that excel on longer stages tend to do better. I think that's the current metagame that we're in right now. So let's make sure it is completely balanced, an exact number of long stages to short stages. That's why the inclusion of Hollow Bastion is going to be really cool, because it is a balanced stage. Just to give you an exact number, so the standard stage length or width is 160 units, and most stages function off of this. This is how long Small Battlefield is, Battlefield, Final Destination, Kalos, technically Lylat too, and Hollow Bastion and Northern Cavern. These are all 160 units exactly. So this is pretty much our gold standard. The second criteria that I have is we have to make a rule set that you can play a best of 5. And that's kind of weird because the entire tournament, it's best 2 out of 3, and then all of a sudden it'll swap to best of 5. And so we have to cater an entire rule set to be able to support best of 5. Now, I understand that it's hype and it's seen as competitive. You get more matches. That's fine. It really probably shouldn't be a thing, but at this point, there's no way we're going to revert back to best of 3s for an entire tournament. Let aside not going to best of 1s either. So we have to make a rule set that can be played on best of 5. I've seen some rule sets out there that just, if you played a best of 5, you just run out of stages and all that kind of stuff. This is going to dive into, we have to decide when DSR is appropriate, when modified DSR is appropriate, or no DSR is appropriate. I'll go into those in a bit, but the main point of criteria 2 is, 1, we have to have enough stages to actually play a set of 5 on, but also this should not encourage sets to only be played on 2 stages. And this is really, really crucial, because if you create a rule set where you ban these stages, and then it's a best of 5, and you go, okay, well, game 1 was on PS2, game 2 is FD, and then you go back to PS2, you go FD, and then you play on PS2 for the last game. From a variety perspective, and I don't mean from a variety perspective of like, oh yes, it's refreshing and new from the player standpoint, but from a data collecting standpoint, there's such low variance on those stages. You only saw how good those characters did on those 2 stages. It is not a healthy data point. And why are data points important? Well, that's because a tournament is a data point. That's the whole point of it. It's to find a result. Who's the best? Who came out on top? What character did? And when you have such bad variance, or not variance, that's a terrible word for that. When you have such low variety, it's really unclear. Imagine if you entered a tournament where only Final Destination was legal. You're going to change the entire results of the tournament by doing that. So I want to create a rule set that allows you to play on best of 5, but also does not encourage players to just play on 2 stages for the entire set. Our last criteria is going to be how do we weed out stages that should not be legal? And the way I'm doing this is I have a few items on this third criteria that are pretty much an instant ban from me. One is glitches. If there is something horribly wrong with the stage, people are going through the stages, issues like Pokemon Stadium 1 has, something like that, then it's pretty much stricken off. 2 is if it has high variance, and these are things like if it has walk-offs. Like I know the hero stage starts on a walk-off, and like someone could just die within like a second. These are going to result in games ending in wild variance. Other things that cause this type of effect are extreme blast zones, whether they be insanely long or insanely short. So I've kind of listed it out here. These I will get into this more even when I talk about hazards and stuff like Smashville. I've seen people say, yeah, well, you should know that the platform is, coming over at this time, and so you deserve to die at 0 because that was your mistake. And fine, there is a point of where you have to understand that, yes, I should have known that there was a walk-off there, or that the Smashville platform was moving towards the blast zone at this time. But the reality of it is it creates an extreme high variance. It creates scenarios where you make the exact same mistake, 4 seconds earlier and nothing happens, versus making it 4 seconds later at the exact same part of the stage, but this time you die for it. Those are high variance attributes to a stage. And the last thing I want to talk about before we jump into the actual rule sets is I want to talk about aspects that are important about choosing a legal stage. The first thing that I value probably the most out of anything is the platform layout. This is really important because it essentially affects how neutral is played out. And neutral is defined usually by when both players have all options open to them. Having platforms around changes what those options are. It's one of the most impactful parts of any stage. So I value that as the highest. Another thing that I value really high, slightly under that, is your stage length. Stage length is really important because it showcases a few strengths and flaws in characters. One, if it's a really long stage, it will highlight characters who have mobility and want to create space. Second, it also will highlight characters who can choose not to interact if there's enough stage. Think an insane extreme example is like Hyrule Temple. Like imagine if you are not a fast character and you're playing Sonic and he taps you, you are not catching him and he's going to time you out. That is an insane extreme example, but it's just to help clarify a point. Now on the reverse, small stages shows us a metagame where mobility is not as big as an issue, or it's not emphasized as much, and it emphasizes other strength like close quarter combat and the ability to cover escape options and stuff like that. That's also a really unique aspect and also important and valid, and we should definitely include that in our rule set and not just favor one type or archetype of character. And then the middle, or in the middle of that, you have your complete balance, which is 160 units, which is what most of the legal stages are. These next ones I won't go so in depth with, but side blast zones are important. Obviously, some characters are better at killing really early. They've got different base knockback on their moves, better base than knockback growth. That's important too. Top blast zones are important as well. Walls are very, very important. It kind of gets overlooked, but a lot of characters have very unique options on walls. A lot of recoveries, a lot of edge guards are affected by walls. Definitely not a bad part about competitive play. It is just a unique attribute of a stage. Slants are a hot topic. Slants, do they belong in competitive play? Do they not belong in competitive play? Then there's transformations, like stuff like Fountain of Dreams and Town and City. And then lastly, I've got platform heights, which can matter a lot. What moves can reach under a platform? How does that affect your advantage state? How does that affect your disadvantage state too? All right, so those are all the attributes I have on stages, and those are the kind of things I'm looking for when I'm choosing to weed out some of these stages. Let's go ahead and look at some of these rule sets. So the first rule set that I want to cover, it kind of comes in a pair. They're extremely conservative stage lists. The first thing you're going to see is that there are a lot of classics that are not included on this list. That's because of the criteria that we set. I'll be following that. One of the first things I wanted to mention is I don't want duplicate stage layouts. Platform layouts are really important, and this one keeps it really short. We have a small battlefield, which is a close bi-platform battlefield, which is a tri-platform stage, final destination, no platform, Northern Cavern, which is a far distance bi-platform, and then Hollow Bastion, which is a single platform layout. This cuts a lot of stages, but it is absolutely the most balanced stage list that you can possibly make. Each stage length is 160. Each stage has a unique platform layout, reasonable blast zones. They vary slightly depending on, like, if Battlefield has to have a higher platform because of balancing issues of killing off the top platform. There's not really any walls on any of them. They're very symmetrical with the platform layout, giving them unique differences. this could be, I mean, you could technically call it hazards on as well. But this is the absolute most balanced stage list you could create. Now, I won't go into personal opinion on whether it's enough variety to keep you entertained. Those are two subjects that are completely different, whether being balanced or being interesting. But if you just want to be the most absolute balance where it favors no character, this is it. This is the one. And just as a reminder, there's a lot of cool stages that I left out, like Town and City is left out, mainly because it's longer. It destroys the balance of having ubiquitous 160 unit length. Other stages, Pokemon Stadium 2 is left out, not only because it's insanely longer, but because it would be a duplicate platform layout. Same thing with Smashville. It's the same thing as Hollow Bastion, except it's way shorter. And so if you included any one of those single stages, then you would start losing your balance. You would start having duplicate stage layouts. So this is, no pun intended, very clean and simple. The most difficult part of this would probably be determining what your stage bands would look like. In a best of 5, which is our second criteria, is we have to make this work, where you could have a set of 5. Melee runs a 5-stage rule set where there are no bans, and pretty much a set is played on every single stage. And it kind of creates a weird dynamic in Melee where FD is almost an auto win for certain characters and certain matchups. I don't know if I would recommend that. There's the extremities of DSR, and you'll see this conversation happen multiple times, is you could do no bans with DSR, and so you'd play on every stage once, all 5. Or you could do one ban and then do no DSR, and then you'd pretty much be playing on 2 stages for the entire best of 5 set, which was also something that we wanted to avoid. So it kind of creates this weird dynamic of what exactly would be the rule set on this 5-stage list. It's incredibly balanced. I wish it was as easy as having seven stages where you could just do like a one ban with DSR kind of thing. But if we're going with the absolute most balanced, this is what we're with. So I would recommend probably in a best of 5 you do 0 bans DSR. Every stage is played on. It's the most equally represented of the metagame. It shows how each character does on every single stage at the top level of play. But of course you could do 1 ban, no DSR. You just would never see some matchups on some stages. That could work too. So our next really conservative stage list would be a 7-stage rule set. And as a reminder, we have to make it 7 because 6 won't work, because you'll never be able to choose a starting stage. So let's take a look at this list. We have 2 additions, and we added Lylat and Town and City. And there is a lot to talk about with Lylat. And let's go ahead and talk about it here. 1, Lylat is a very contentious stage. It has slants. It's one of the only legal stages here that has a slant. This makes it unique. Some people are going to say it's bad. Some people are going to say it's good. We have to look past that of objectifying things as good or bad. It is simply something that is. It is a stage attribute. Our list for taking away stages said we want to look for things that add extreme high variance. We want to look for things that cause glitches, things with unorthodox blast zones. This does not create any of those. It is also a balanced length of 160 units. I did reach out on my social media. I asked people, hey, why is Lylat banned? And the problem is people just don't like it. I asked for specific reasons. I really tried to ask for specific reason. And people are just like, yeah, things happen. Yeah, every once in a while this move doesn't work, and it's usually because you're like on a slope and the move doesn't work because like either your character is like, you know, leaning a certain way and it's different and you haven't adapted to that, and so characters are like falling out of your normal bread and butters, or you know, some people say weird stuff happens, but they've patched this stage like twice. There was a complaint with how it snagged people on the bottom of it. The bottom is a very, very generous slope. It's insane what they had to do to it coding-wise, but it works. Nobody's getting stuck under Lylat anymore. It is not... It's at least not possible. Like, if you try to go under there and try to get caught under the stage, you have to be, like, past the jet engines, which is absolutely way too generous, but, you know, they did it, which is really nice because they were listening to our feedback. So you have the stage where you have these slants, and people don't like slants, but it's not like really a reason for it not to be legal. So right now I've got it included because it adds a lot more than it takes away. It adds a unique platform layout with a unified 160 units, and I find that such an incredibly powerful and important part of a stage attribute, so that I would include it. The stage that I actually have a little bit more issue with is Town and City, because Town and City is an amazing stage platform layout. The problem with it is that it is longer than any other stage on this list. Everything is 160 units except for Town and City, which is just a little bit longer than any of those other ones. Town and City, to be precise, is 165 units. So it makes it 5 units longer. Not a lot longer than other stages, but you know, it is longer, and that is something that I recognize. Unfortunately, after we left the 5-stage rule set, we kind of have to start making some exceptions and settling for stages that are not going to absolutely perfectly fit the mold. That's why our perfect rule set is at 5, but if you want to include things like Town, you're going to need to also include things like Lylat, so we have a full 7 stages here. In terms of rule set, to make it work in a best of 5, it's kind of like the same scenario, but you have a lot more flexibility. With a 7 stage, you could do a 1-band DSR type of thing. I think that fits really, really well here. You could do a 1-band modified DSR. Modified DSR pretty much is the middle ground between a person who dislikes DSR or a person who really likes DSR. The last option is no DSR, which can be pretty wild. It could be anything from 1 or really no bands, or 1 band with no DSR, which will most likely end up playing on 2 stages, or it could go all the way up to something like 3 bands DSR, where you play, or 3 bands no DSR, where you play an entire set on the same stage. And that doesn't sound great. I would never recommend a rule set to do something like that, where it goes down to 1 stage with no DSR and you just play the entire set on that 1 stage. But when you turn off DSR, those are the type of scenarios that happen often. So this next stage list, I'm going to be real, it looks so fun. But as always, we need to make sure that we are not basing a stage off of fun. We want to use our criteria. We want to make sure that it's balanced. And I think there is a very happy harmony that is going on with this. There are some very unique stage choices here, and there are some amendments that I would also recommend. So let's go ahead and jump into it. First of all, we have our 5 starters, the most balanced set of starters that we can possibly have. I think if anybody takes anything away from this video, is that these 5 stages are perfectly balanced in length, in platform layout, in blast zones. These are our absolute best 5 stages in terms of a healthy metagame. Now the counterpicks are where this stage list gets really interesting. You see a bunch of very unique stages. Let's start off with just the first thing I want to highlight is the duplicated platform layouts. We've seen a ton of terrible stage lists that will have one single plat layout and then two double platform layouts and then two tri-platform layouts and then like one no platform layout, and it's just very, very unbalanced. But with this, we have a duplicate of every one of our starters. And beyond that, it goes a step further. There is a wall on every single one of these duplicated platform layouts, which is so awesome because walls just add another layer of gameplay. The only exception being Smashville. Oh man, if Smashville had a wall, that would be absolutely perfect. Oh my god, that would be so good. But unfortunately, that's not the case. The next thing I want to talk about with these 5 counter picks is the length. So, Pokemon Stadium 2, obviously a really long stage. Fountain of Dreams, really short stage. Wiley's Castle, really long stage. Kalos is a neutral, it's 160 units. And then Smashville, you have a really short stage. So, you've got 2 long stages, 2 short stages, and then 1 in the middle. Those are also insanely balanced in terms of our not only platform layouts but also our stage links, which are really important. Where things start to get really, really weird is let's talk about these blast zones and what's going on with the stages. Let's talk about our good friend Pokemon Stadium 2. Until this point of time, it has been the classic, the starter stage, where every set is played to death on. It's kind of trash, but not in the way you think. Platform layout, amazing. No transformations, amazing. Having a wall, amazing. Normalized blast zones, amazing. These are all aspects that are really, really, really awesome. The length of the stage is a problem. It's a big problem. We talked about in our criteria how important it was that we make sure that we are not favoring certain types of metas. This stage length definitely favors characters that can run away, want to run away, and have the mobility. It is our longest legal stage, not in this specific rule set, but it has been our longest legal stage since the beginning of the game. And honestly, with the addition of small battlefield, that has to change. That really, really needs to change. It's kind of weird we have like this just starter stage that we've just gotten so accustomed to, but we really have to go take a step back and go like, just understand a small battlefield is just more balanced in every single way. It's the same platform layout, except it's not insanely long. Very, very similar blast zones. Just play on small battlefield. You get to choose your own music. You can play all of your Pokemon songs if you want. But we have to start distancing ourselves from Pokemon Stadium 2 being the only starter that we should be going to, and entire sets playing on it. I mean, like, if you really want to, I mean, you can always gentleman and just do it anyways, but separating us from just thinking that PS2 is the best stage of all time and has 0 flaws, we definitely have to step away from that. Fountain of Dreams is actually going to have pretty normal blast zones when it comes to the top blast zone like Battlefield. Where it starts to get really interesting is the type of blast zones that it has on the sides and the bottom. So for the sides, it has 163, which is about, I would say it's about like 6 or 7 units longer than Pokemon Stadium for reference. So that's a little bit bigger. To kind of give you an idea, Battlefield has 160 units, so it's a little bit bigger than small Battlefield and Battlefield, because those are both at 160 units away from the side blast zones as well. Where it gets insane and unique is its bottom blast zone, which is not a blast zone a lot of people think about. It has a very extended blast zone at the bottom. It also has a wall that you can interact with at the bottom. This is very unique, and a lot of people don't really know what that would mean for their character. If your character is susceptible to dying from spikes, this might be a really good stage for you, because you wouldn't die off the blast zone to a powerful spike at early percent. You would live, and if your character had a good enough recovery, they could make it back. Unlike a stage on like Smashville or Hollow Bastion, where if you get spiked, you are going to die super early. Even if your character could like physically make it back up to the ledge, the blast zone is so close that you are just entering the blast zone as soon as you get spiked. The wall is another cool aspect. The only thing that does worry me about this stage is that it has been reported that there are some frame drops if certain conditions are met. These are things like Ice Climber dittos with lots of splashing, or like 2 Warriors like turning on the side while using their bike. I'll be honest, I don't think those are big enough reasons to ban a stage. I think with the frame drops, there's such an insanely rare scenario that, I'll be honest, I have way more problems with stages like Pokemon Stadium 2 and Town and City than something like that, where, you know, stages like Town and City are like literally carrying people off at certain times of the match, and can cause like much higher variance than anything of dropping a few frames in like the Ice Climber ditto. Ice Climber mains, you might just, you know, gentlemen's not to play on the stage. Maybe you like it. Maybe you can find some cool tech with it. I don't know. But I don't think it's enough to ban the stage. Now, another one of the really unique stages on this list is Wiley's Castle. This is probably about as far in deviation as I was willing to go. It hit a lot of our checkboxes on something that we needed for this rule set. It hit the checkbox of being a stage that has no platforms, so we could find something that mirrored Final Destination. It has walls, so it meets our criteria of being a duplicate stage layout, except having a bit of variety in terms of, you know, having a wall there, kind of like our other stages are. Where it is different and where it is controversial is, one, the stage length is long. It is 174 units. And just for a comparison, we were just talking about how long Pokemon Stadium 2 is. So Pokemon Stadium 2 is 187 units long. So it's not as long as Pokemon Stadium 2. Fact is, you know, honestly, it's like 12 units shorter. It's much closer to Pokemon Stadium 1, which you probably can't use that as a good reference, but it's like the middle of like between Pokemon Stadium 2 and Small Battlefield. It's somewhere in the middle in terms of length. So it's a little bit longer than normal, but not as insane as Pokemon Stadium 2. The next thing, and probably the biggest thing, is the blast zone, the top blast zone. So the top blast zone is incredibly high. It is 212 units, which for reference, like something like, we'll just use Small Battlefield for an example, is 180. So this is like 30 units higher than a normal stage. Now, there are some stages that we have legal that get close to that. Some weird examples would be like Battlefield is 192. Actually, that makes perfect sense that Battlefield is. Smashville being like 190 is actually really surprising that Smashville is that tall. But Kalos would, or not Kalos, but Wiley's would definitely stand on top as the top tall blast zone. Is that a problem? Is that a bad thing? Or is that just a part of the stage? That's probably the most controversial thing about my stage list that I particularly think is this top. I would be curious to know if this becomes a really important counterpick versus characters who like to kill off the top very often. Maybe Bayo, or maybe Sora's metagame hasn't even developed, but maybe if Sora's meta develops into where he kills you off the top often with some of his stuff, maybe Wiley's becomes an important counterpick by having a taller ceiling. It plays a very unique part, but it also matches our criteria of what we want. But I will definitely admit, it is the most controversial stage I've picked, simply because it has a high blast zone. And that's a pretty good sign when your most controversial thing is it has a high blast zone. I still don't even think that's as bad as having the insanely long Pokemon Stadium 2, or maybe talk about Town and City, and even to an extent Lylat. Kalos fits perfectly into the stage list. It is, first of all, the stage is beautiful. I think people forget how awesome it is. But on a serious note, it's 160 units long. It's a duplicate stage platform layout, exactly what we're looking for. It has some high blast zones, and it has some pretty far blast zones on the side, so it is a bigger stage. Other than that, there's really not much to say. The stage length is great, and it really fits exactly what we're looking for into our criteria, so I won't spend too much time on that. Smashville is always an interesting stage to talk about. For a long time, and it's kind of just been a lone stage for characters that really wants to be up close. Some weird meta has developed also, where some characters who like to camp will just kind of sit in the center and control everything and make it really hard to approach. Very interesting stage the way it's developed, but either way, it is our shortest legal stage that we have. To be even more specific, Smashville is 139 in terms of length, which is like 20 units shorter than Smashville. Very, very, very short. I don't have Yoshi's Story on this stage list. It was either between Yoshi's Story was kind of fighting Fountain of Dreams for a spot, but Yoshi's Story was the only thing that even came close to having the same length. So it's very, very unique in that sense. It meets our criteria with having a duplicate layout, which is Hollow Bastion. I really wish it had a wall. Man, that would make everything perfect if it just had a wall, but it is good that we have another short stage list in our grouping here. So we've covered the 5 stages and the counterpicks, and we're pretty much left with Lylat and Town and City. I really, really kind of put Lylat and Town and City in the same category, which is really kind of absurd to say. They're really weird. Lylat has slants, which, as I've mentioned earlier, slants are a thing. They don't really cause any glitches. They cause you to have to adjust, which is not a bad thing, because certain characters get different type of benefits. Some characters lose some type of benefits. They have to play different. They have to adapt. But that's not inherently a bad thing. It is just a thing that you have to do. I also mentioned in the other section that I've asked people to tell me what's wrong with Lylat, and no one can give me like an exact answer. Like, everyone's like, just weird things happen, and I'm like, what weird things? And they're like, I don't know, just the things. And so the only thing that I've seen or heard from anybody is that sometimes Kirby's up B doesn't latch onto the ledge, which I find really weird, and I kind of asked for examples, and no one linked me anything. And I'm not saying that's not a thing that doesn't happen, but just really weird. Nobody has a great reason to actually ban Lylat. It's really unique platform layout, and I really appreciate that and value that a lot. It's got 160 units in length, which is really important from a balance standpoint. And then Town and City. Town and City is also an insanely unique platform layout, where it kind of transforms between being like this weird Smashville to a Final Destination to almost like a Kalos type of thing. So a lot of really cool aspects about the stage and how it functions. There's nothing like it, so I can't pair it with another stage. Just like Lylat, I really wish we would have gotten a flat Lylat too, with no slants. That would have been amazing. But we didn't, and so we're just kind of relegated with these two stages. I think they're worth including. I think they offer uniqueness and healthy competitive gameplay, so I do want to include them. So with such an enormous amount of stages, you get a lot of freedom with how you want to meld this type of stage list. I think one of the ones that I would start off with is a 3-band DSR for best of 5, and it would change to a 4-band DSR in a best of 3. And what essentially this would allow you to do is, especially like in just a normal best of 3, which is what you'll be playing most of the time, you can get rid of like 2 whole archetypes if you want, or of course you can spread out the bands however you like. You're not confined to just banning stage layouts. So and then with DSR, you would make sure that you wouldn't have to go back to any stages that you've already won on or stages that you already lost on. So you get a high variety of stage, which that's what this rule set is encouraging, is you to try playing on a lot of different stages. You've got a lot of different options. Very, very in-depth counterpick system here. I would love to see how awesome it worked or how poorly it would work again. There's a lot to learn from here. The second way you could do it, you could do modified DSR, where you definitely could do 4 bands DSR or modified DSR in a best of 5. That would be fine. That's like the happy medium. And then you could just do no DSR. Again, it would really suck to just do no DSR, and then out of 12 stages, you just pick the same 2 the entire set. I'm not going to go into it again of why that's probably not the best rule set, because I've already covered it. I've already made a whole video on it. If you want to check that out, I'll put that in the description as well. But I think in a stage list this big, I would do MDSR, or not MDSR, but normal DSR. I think MDSR really, really shines in this mid-rangey, like maybe 7 to 9 kind of stage list thing. But we have our giant rule set here, and we want to encourage as many different stages played on during the entire set. Okay, so we've made it to the last rule set that I'm going to make, and that is a hazards rule set. So this hazards rule set that I've made is going to be a little different than anybody is really posted or ever shown online. I still really like the concept of having all your stages as starters and no insanely, I guess, high varianted counterpicks. So our starters are Battlefield, Final Destination, Small Battlefield, Hollow Bastion, Town and City, Fountain of Dreams, and Northern Cavern. These are all unique stage platform layouts. One thing that I really have to emphasize is that when making the stage list, the absolute worst part about trying to make a hazards on stage list is that it's nearly impossible to balance within this criteria that I've made in terms of stage length, especially in terms of variance. I'll be really honest. We don't have Smashville on the stage list because, one, you could technically add it as an 8th, but it is such an insane stage to play on competitively, and I think a lot of people have a lot of fun memories of it because it was legal in Brawl, it was legal in Smash 4. I think it's not good or healthy for competitive play to have high variance things like walk-offs or insanely small blast zones. Just for reference, the blast zones are so close to the platform of Smashville that you will die at 0% if Ness grabs you and just forward throws you. just to kind of give you an idea of how insanely close you are to those side blast zones. Some people are going to be like, fun, oh, that's cool, adapt. But if that's the case, you know, if that's the mentality, then let's just put on Halberd, let's just put on Delfino, the hero stage. You know, if adapting is all we need to do and high variance isn't important to you, then you can make a stage list like that. But in the criteria that I've made, I value those things very highly. There are also discussions of pretty much adapt, deal with it. You got hit on this part of Smashville, you definitely deserve to die at whatever, 10, 12, 15%, whatever it may be. It kind of irks me when people are okay with that mindset of, if I make this mistake, I die at 12. If I make this exact same mistake, 4 seconds later on the same part of the stage, I don't die at all. I really dislike that that's okay with people. Another part of a problem with Smashville, if people probably don't think about this as much because they don't really have to play against it, but at top level play, that stage is very uninteractive, where you just sit on the side platforms and charge up whatever insane thing that you have to charge up, whether it be in the previous game, it was a limit. In Brawl, you know, you could just fly under things. I'm sure there are some extremely degenerative tactics here. Like, just imagine that Steve places a block on the platform, jumps up there, and then while he's off on the side, he's just mining. And you can't approach because you'd be approaching him in the air while he's on the ground. Like, that's just one example of how uninteractive Smashville as a hazards on stage is. I really don't think it has a healthy place in our metagame. A lot of people are gonna disagree with me, but I've been playing this game for like 13 years competitively, and Smashville is kind of been there because we needed it to be there. We didn't have the ability to turn hazards off. And it's been there, and we've had some great times. Balloons are awesome. I love it. But man, at the closer you get to top level play, the more degenerative it can get. Absolutely. And that's really hard for a lot of people to see. Other than that, I think Town and City is probably the most controversial stage. Besides that, it has the same problem where platforms can just kind of take you off the side. The center platform goes really high. A lot of weird gimmicks like Charizard up throw, K-Rool up throw, anything like that when the middle platform's at its absolute peak. That's about as worse or as bad as it gets. Not as high varianted as Smashville is. So I would leave it. I would leave it to these stages. I'm really excited to see how Fountain of Dreams works. I'm really excited to just kind of know if like the frame rate drops of Fountain actually happen commonly, if they're actually impactful. So this is my hazards on stage list. I'm not a fan of hazards on. It's kind of like Sakurai was like, we asked Sakurai for like 20 years, like, hey, can we turn these things off, these crazy stage hazards? And he's like, fine, yes, we can turn them off. And then we were like, never mind, I'm just gonna play with them on, and then kind of hobble together whatever, you know, horrendously unbalanced stage list we can. But this is the absolute best I could think of that I was comfortable releasing. So if it's your cup of tea, awesome. There's definitely some validation for it to be a conversation that you should have, and if the community wants hazards on, I'd be down to at least try it. I don't think it's the best thing for competitive play. I think it's more suited for a side event. If it's a side event, dude, you should just open the floodgates. Smashville, like there are some other stages that could work with hazards on if it's a side event. Maybe even dip into like the Halberd Delfino kind of area. I don't know. It's pretty limitless if it's not meant for like main competitive play. But that's pretty much just where I stand with it. Alright, so that's pretty much the end of the video. I'm just going to do a quick TLDR. If you didn't want to watch any of that, you didn't want to hear about any of the discussion, I'm going to give it in such a short bite that hopefully it's easy to digest. The first thing I'm going to say is that the 5-stage list that I've created here is easily the most balanced, hyper-competitive rule set. It has 5 unique platform layouts. They are all 160 units long. They all have very balanced and normalized blast zones. There are no walls, there's no slants, there's not much variety, but the balance of these 5 stages are absolutely immaculate. No other rule set will be as balanced as this. If you're looking for just the optimal stage list, it's these 5 right here. I would honestly, you'd probably in a best of 5, you would just run it with no bans, just like Melee does. And best of 3, you'd probably run it with 1 ban. Probably just do DSR on those. That's about as simple as it can get. You could change some stuff there, but in terms of those 5 stages, that's the go-to. The other one that I would recommend is the enormous 12-stage list. It solves a lot of problems. The stage length issue is all balanced. So that's awesome. There's not like a bunch of really long stages and no short stages. It also solves the duplicate platform layout issue where for our 5 starters, there is a duplicate of each one of those 5 starters. So there's not one stage archetype that is favored over others. It also includes Lylat and Town and City as our unique stages. If you want to listen to the Lylat discussion, it'll be timestamped, so you can go do that. But we would fuel that with either, you could do a lot of different types of rule sets for that, like either three bans with DSR in a best of 5, or 4 bans with DSR in a best of 3. You could also run it with MDSR. You could also run it with no MDSR. But the way I would recommend it is the first way I said it: the 3 bans best of 5 with DSR, or 4 bans best of 3 with DSR. So those are the 2 that I'd highly recommend. There is a way that you could run hazards on. I don't necessarily like it. I list out a lot of reasons why, from a competitive standpoint, it's really not that great. You could do it, but honestly, we have so many better tools to have a healthy competitive tournament setting. And if I was going to pick any of these rule sets at a top level of play as a competitor for a super insanely consistent rule set, it would probably be best to go with the conservative. But if we want variety, we want to try different things, we want to experiment, which now is a great time to experiment, I would take on the 12-stage list. So yeah, there's a lot there for you guys. If you have any questions, if you want to have discussion about it, comment below. I'm interested to see what you guys think, some of my unorthodox picks. The last thing I will say is there are a lot of other stages that I didn't even mention. Like, I didn't even really talk about Unova replacing Pokemon Stadium 2 because of how insanely long it is compared to how Unova is. I didn't really cover, background distractions like that are in Final Destination, and maybe replacing Final Destination with something like Woohoo, Omega form or something like that. That's definitely a really valid discussion that I would love to have. But this is to get the ball rolling. I hope you guys enjoy it. I hope I answered every question. If I didn't, leave a comment below. If you've got a comment, if you want to tell me I'm a hack and these stage choices are terrible, feel free to comment below, but be ready to back it up because I put a lot of work into this. But I'm definitely interested to hear some different sides of the story. So thank you, everybody. Feel free to reach out to me on Twitter, too, at the Dakpo. All right, peace out, guys.